Welcome to today's webinar, Leveraging Technology to Drive Growth, Cloud-Based Solutions for Logistics Companies. Today's webinar is hosted by Georgia Center of Innovation for Logistics and Fragility Partners. If you have any questions as you're watching and listening into today's webinar, please submit your question by using the questions panel in GoToMeeting. You'll see this on the right-hand side of your screen. If you're having trouble hearing and you're dialed in, please hang up and dial in again. If you're listening on your PC, please make sure your speakers or headset are turned on and the volume is adjusted appropriately. If you're still having trouble, please let us know by sending a question or click on Raised Hand in the GoToWebinar application. All attendees are in listen-only mode for this webinar. We will do our best to answer questions you submit during the webinar, and there will be time at the end of the session for submitting your questions as well. Now I would like to introduce you to Paige Siplon, the Executive Director of the Georgia Center of Innovation for Logistics.
Thank you, Sandy. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to what will be a first in a series of our educational webinars that we're starting. And they'll be focused on topics like cloud computing that we'll talk about today that will hopefully grow your business and connect and serve even more customers around Georgia and around the world. For those of you not familiar, let me just take a minute and explain the Center of Innovation. The Center of Innovation for Logistics is a strategic industry-focused component of the state's Department of Economic Development, and that's a mouthful. In general, our center works in two broad areas. First, very importantly, as a resource in the constant effort to recruit and expand new businesses into Georgia, potentially new customers of yours. No matter what the type, these companies strive to move products to their customers more efficiently and more cost effectively, and use companies like yours to help them do that. Second, we work with companies and communities all over Georgia to understand where their businesses are growing or where they're not growing, and what logistics-related challenges and opportunities are in their sites. Now, this is indeed a very broad description of what we do. And if we were going to try to cover all the specific things we get involved in, it would be a webinar in itself, and that's not what you're here for. But very quickly, we cover things and get involved in things like Homeland Security grants for the coastal communities, port security grants, freight flow data, commodities, new emerging market opportunities, new technologies, which we'll focus on today, infrastructure funding, state-level strategic planning for infrastructure investment, and very importantly, building an industry network that is all modes and really all aspects of this ecosystem we fondly call logistics. So started holding an annual logistics summit that many of you have attended to help bring this ecosystem together. This annual summit was also the time where we released an annual logistics report, which again many of you have read. And if you haven't seen the email that will go out shortly, please mark your calendars for May 10th, because that will be the date for our, hard to believe, third annual logistics summit that will be held May 10th, 2011. We look forward to working and talking with all of you more. For those of you we have not met, please don't hesitate to call us or email us if you need anything or if we can help in any way. So more specifically, why this topic? Why cloud computing? Of all the options and topics and things that are out there to talk about, why did we pick cloud computing and software as a service as a topic? You know, often when we talk with companies, particularly 3PLs and warehousing and some trucking folks and transportation folks, we find that one hurdle in connecting to new customers and even keeping your existing ones is the ability to provide the kind of visibility that shippers and your customers are beginning to expect more and more. This can create a hard stop when replying to RFPs or bidding on new customers' business. However, making the move to a WMS or a TMS or a YMS or any other acronym or type of new system brings about visions of huge IT staffs, millions of dollars of investment, and painful months of deployment and time needed. But it doesn't have to be that way. There's a lot of new technologies, and today's webinar will discuss just this and focus on a fast-growing new platform known as SaaS, or software as a service, or better, more fondly known as cloud computing. To walk us through this cloud, we have with us today Fragility Partners, who's volunteered to help us talk about and go through this technology. Fragility Partners is a Georgia-based, very importantly, management and technology consulting firm. And specifically with Fragility Partners, we have Kevin George and Ernie Riddle. Just quickly, Kevin is the founder, and you can see this on the screen in front of you, is the managing director of Fragility Partners, and has a bit of a technology background himself as the former director of products and technology research for a small Georgia company, Manhattan Associates. Ernie is the former president of Ryder Systems International and is also a partner at Fragility Partners, so obviously has a little bit of a logistics knowledge and background himself. These are two industry experts, and we're glad to have them partner with us on this webinar. So we're in good hands, as they've worked with many clients just like you to help figure out how to deploy innovative solutions and supply chain cloud type computing platforms. So to finish, don't be shy. Sorry we can't all be on the same conference call and talking together, but don't be shy to send in your questions or raise your hand to ask your questions. And without further ado, Kevin George and Ernie Riddle. Enjoy.
Good morning. This is Ernie Riddle from Fragility Partners, and Kevin and I are delighted to be a part of the discussion today on cloud computing and how to leverage the many new innovations in this field to enhance growth and improve the business development, innovation, and operational efficiency in companies. And Kevin and I will be sharing the presentation duties today. And we'll begin with a higher level look at what's happening in the marketplace in general with the economic circumstance both here in the U.S. and around the world. What are some of the trends in the marketplace, and then how does cloud computing allow a company to really take advantage of some of the things that are either an issue in the marketplace or an opportunity in the marketplace. We'll spend some time at a higher level talking about the technology evolution to cloud computing, and just take a quick look back at how we got to where we are now in terms of technical capability and the new platforms that are available. And then we'll begin to drill down a bit on how to use cloud computing to solve some of today's business issues. And I think most people would agree that technology needs to be a competitive advantage for a company to compete successfully in the marketplace today, because technology is laced almost in every product offering in some ways, and every market segment in some ways. We'll also spend some time on some case studies, getting very granular on what some companies in the logistics industry have done with cloud computing to date. And then, as Paige and Sandy said earlier, we welcome questions, throughout the presentation, and we'll have time at the end to cover those. We'll attempt to cover them as we go through the few slides that we have this morning, and I would encourage you to use the facility in the GoToWebinar to ask those questions, and then we'll deal with them as we go along and at the end of the presentation as well. As a bit of a backdrop, let's talk for a minute about what's happening in the marketplace, and perhaps these 6 or 7 things we'll be talking about here reflect what's going on in many businesses around the country. And first of all, I think it's generally accepted that customers themselves are expecting much, much more these days from their suppliers. Regardless of the relationship that has been there in the past, customers are asking the suppliers to be more involved, to reach further into the business, to share information, to do joint project work together, things of that nature. And that trend is very evident and is expected to continue dramatically as all companies face the new realities of today's marketplace. There's a word called strategic partners that is often used, and I think historically, at least in my experience, that word has been used as a way to describe, hey, I'd like to be a strategic partner with you, and which means give me a lower price. Well, that's true perhaps in the past, and certainly is true today, but it's assuming a new meaning now as well, as more companies are looking for true strategic partners, to where more sharing is required in order to face the demands of the marketplace. And speaking of marketplace demands, I read a report recently in the Wall Street Journal about growth. And this particular study suggested that fully 85% of the growth will be fueled by global demand kind of growth. And that simply means that these will be companies, the growth will come from companies that are doing business on a global basis, or companies that are serving companies that are doing business on the global basis. So the reality is that the world of global interaction, global reality is here, and almost every company faces that in some way. Thirdly, you probably see this in your business, but it seems more and more competition is available everywhere in the marketplace. New companies are entering new segments. Companies that are in the segments are developing new products that extend their footprint inside of customers. So more and more companies and more companies are in fact fighting over what's seemingly a constant set of dollars. Obviously, to price pressure. I don't think I've talked to a business person literally in the last 2 years. One of the first things in the conversation reflects price. Price pressure continues and is expected to continue in the marketplace as we go forward. Most would say in today's world it's tougher to get a customer. And not only is it tougher to get, I mean, more money and time has to be spent on business development, more sales activity, more marketing activity, more commitments on the operations side are real things in today's marketplace. And once you get them, it's even tougher to keep them because more and more people are after them, as we noted earlier, as there's more competition everywhere along the way. Internally, there's more demands for operating efficiencies. There's a need to put a couple more points on the gross margin line as an example. Customers themselves are demanding lower prices, as we mentioned before, and that puts pressure on operating efficiencies in the gross margin. Most would say in today's world that customers are making decisions on a slower basis, that more people are involved in decisions. People are reluctant to make major decisions, it seems like, and though in the last several months we in our business see some relief of that, but in general, compared to just a few months ago, there are slower decisions everywhere. So the question is, and how can business development and how can cloud computing help people get to the point where they can make decisions faster and better. And last but not least, on marketplace dynamics, the bosses, the boards, the senior management in general is constantly asking for more innovation, new ways to do things, new ways to get through efficiencies in the business. And oh, by the way, we still want to grow our business. That's a constant theme as time goes forward here. Cloud computing can help. And we want to demonstrate that with some level of detail today. It's our experience that cloud computing can help, again, with simple things like collaboration. How do you get more interaction between yourselves and your customer or your supplier base? How do you get interaction better between marketing and sales inside of a company, or between sales and operations, or between engineering and finance, or whatever the scenario may be? Also, that leads to really tapping into the employee base and even the customer base for innovative ideas of what can be done to strengthen the relationship. And that leads further to operating efficiencies and as I said before, really enhances the opportunity to do business development better, number one, get efficiencies there and more effectiveness there as well. And so what we want to demonstrate here, and just beginning in just a few moments, is how cloud computing can help you follow this trail along the way. Now let's spend a minute on technology trends in general at the high level. Many of us remember years ago in the 80s when the mainframes were the order of the day. Companies like IBM and Digital and other great companies for that matter that really had the world by the tail in terms of they had the solution to providing information to mostly larger companies in those days. But it gave the appearance and then the reality of a lot of control and a lot of manageability. But those implementations would take years and cost millions and millions of dollars, and I'm sure you remember those. Well, along came the client-server platform, which expanded this functionality as it relates to size of company, and many companies could afford a client-server kind of application, and the computing power that once rested only in mainframes was delivered to the desktop by the client-server platform. And this added the opportunity for a lot of speed to get implementations done faster, flexibility so that you could do different things on different desktop platforms, etc. Let's fast forward to today. What's going on today? And this whole area, as Paige mentioned earlier, cloud computing or software as a service or service on demand or computing on demand is a reality, as we'll talk about in a few slides here. And it's basically internet computing, and it's fueled by folks like Google, Salesforce.com, Amazon, the IBM. Offers the opportunity to combine both the control and manageability that existed in mainframes, but added to that the whole concept of being able to get these implementations in with a lot of speed very flexible kinds of applications that could be tailored to individual company needs. What is cloud computing? It might be good to just digress for a moment and talk about it from the very base. And we see on the slide there in the upper left-hand corner the Wikipedia definition, which basically says it's an internet-based computing, and it's available on demand like electricity. And which means, in my view, in street language, if you will, that first of all, it brings big company advantage and makes that available to all, because this computing power can be in very small companies with single users. It can be in larger companies with thousands and thousands of users, and the same capability exists for all. It is, in fact, a completely outsourced infrastructure. It's available. Cloud computing applications are available anywhere in the world, and they're available by internet, obviously. Anywhere you can get an internet connection, you can get the cloud computing applications. Upgrades and maintenance are free and are paid as part of a very lower operating costs on an ongoing basis. There's no capital investment required up front. You pay as you go. It's elastic is a word often used, which means that it can expand or contract based on the company's individual needs. And as we'll talk a little bit today, and we have another session in the coming weeks about mobility. Mobility is alive and well, it expands daily, and the technology there is advancing rapidly. On the right-hand side of the chart, and I hope this chart is not too fuzzy to read, but it simply is a testimony to the growth of cloud computing. It started, with storage as an example, not too many years ago. And today, on the right-hand side of the chart, full functionality is now available through the cloud. Now, moving just one other point of evidence here on momentum for cloud computing applications before we dive into some of the applications themselves. This is a busy chart, but it has two messages. One is that the whole arena of cloud computing, including hardware and software outsourcing, infrastructure as a service, software as a service, business process as a service, all the sectors in what is commonly known as in cloud computing are growing substantially, as you see the numbers on the right-hand side of the chart. And this happens to be one report. There are multiple reports like this that give evidence that cloud computing is being adopted. We've discussed cloud computing in the logistics arena with several of the software providers. Many of these software providers are seeing good growth in the logistics industry as well, around CRM, warehouse management systems, where cloud computing foundations are being used to really solve real problems. What are some of the advantages of cloud computing on a generic basis? First of all, I think most people in this area would testify to the fact that implementations are much faster, normally weeks and then on some occasions months, not months and years. The result of that would be you get faster ROI for the investment that you do make. And I think a key point that most would recognize and really appreciate the fact is that these cloud computing applications are much more easily customized to individual needs than has been the case at all. And that's a tremendous advantage for a cloud-based solution user. Lower cost takes two platforms. One is a lower initial cost since there's no capital investment up front, generally speaking. And overall, the total cost of ownership over a life cycle is usually much, much lower for a cloud computing application. Higher value, as has been said before, is normally delivered by these kinds of applications. Security is an important thing to talk about for a moment. But over the last several months and several years, the security issues, some real, some perceived, have been tackled and really solved to the point where security now is no longer an inhibitor to consideration of cloud computing, as it was perhaps when it first started a few years ago. I have a graphic here just to talk about. These are real-life surveys that are done by independent analysts that basically shows a typical, if you will, client-server application that normally, as I said before, it goes live in months and not weeks. Success rate was lower, in this case at 50%. Compared that to a similar survey for cloud computing applications where the success rate is much, much higher. The go-live performance, as I said before, is in weeks and not months and years often. and as a consequence, the value to the customer is much more substantive and less risk-free was the case, if you will. Now, just one other broad slide here just to talk about when would one consider cloud transformation. We'll come back to this later in the presentations, and I won't go through all the detail of the slide. But essentially, starting at the bottom, functionality limitations. If the existing system you have has functionality limitations, as many do, it's a good time to consider a cloud computing application because it is flexible, as I've mentioned before. It's easily tailored and customized for unique needs of a particular customer. If there's a case where you have employees that work remote and they don't have the support of an IT operation in their particular location, again, this cloud computing applications are available via the Internet, and very little support is normally required for these applications. Many companies face resource constraints as manpower has been tight, especially in the last couple of years. Well, again, the consideration of cloud transformation and cloud computing can help resolve internal resource constraints because essentially that need for expertise is outsourced. It's outsourced to software providers themselves, if you will. Other kinds of things in terms of a technology refresh, if it's that time, it's often a good time to consider a move to a cloud computing base, if you will. In summary, for my section here, the slide you see before you now, and Kevin is going to take us through some very specifics on this, is that cloud computing can enable basically, as I call it, the connection of the cloud, connecting your existing applications to many of these new and emerging things like chat between yourselves and your customers or your suppliers, or chat between your employees that are remotely located. Customers, as we noted in the first part of the presentation, are demanding more and more access to information, more access to employees on a timely basis. So things like customer portals and partner portals are all very easily enabled in this cloud computing world, if you will. This emerging and this just almost unbridled growth of the social applications like Facebook and Twitter, et cetera, those can be very easily integrated into applications, like a marketing application, so you can find out what people literally around the country are saying about your goods and services or your company, those kind of things. And so now we'll dive in to talk more specifically about some applications around the front office like CRM, the back office and the ERP, and accounting and finance applications, and out of the warehouse as well with warehouse management system. And Kevin, if you take us through those, please, we can go forward.
Absolutely. I do want to address one question that came in over the wire here, and the attendees for this meeting will be receiving an email follow-up with links to download the presentation, and actually the entire webinar is being recorded as well. You'll be able to download that as well. That'll be available both on the Georgia Center of Innovation for Logistics website as well as the Fragility Partners website. So thanks, Ernie, and good job going through all that. One of the things that I wanted to kind of mention here is as Ernie said, there's an awful lot of providers out there in this space, in the cloud-based solution space. And here's some example vendors in the areas of solution focus where their solutions actually work and are targeted at. So you can see this is an enormous list, and it's rapidly growing. Actually, we were advised of one just earlier on the webinar. So it's really interesting to see how rapidly this is growing, how rapid the adoption is happening, and you saw some of that in the earlier slides. These next few slides, I want to talk a little bit about when on-demand solutions or cloud-based solutions are right for you and sort of what market they serve. And so on the front office is where we're going to start. And these next three slides, you're going to see there's a three-dimensional chart here. It really is focusing on a slice of the market depending on a company's size, whether it be on a revenue scale, whether it be on a scale of operation, number of locations, et cetera, or on the complexity of the operation. And so CRM, e-commerce, and web meeting applications have been around a long time. You saw a list of those earlier in the previous slide. They've been around a long time, and they have actually addressed a very large slice of the marketplace, reaching everything from 1-, 2-person shops all the way up to multinational, highly complex operations. that are global businesses and global 1,000 businesses. Examples of these are like Salesforce.com, Ariba on the e-commerce side, and web meetings sort of like we're having today. Of web-based solutions and these types of solutions are that small companies can now access the same types of technologies and gain the same benefit and advantages as large-sized companies can. And in this front office application, it's really about the real key here is to integrate your sales, marketing, and customer service operations so you have that true end-to-end view of what's happening with your customer, providing a great way to interact more efficiently with your customers and your partners and your clients, and improving collaboration across those three customer-facing organizations. These applications have been around a fair bit. They've been around for the last 7 or 8 years now, and what's interesting to see is how they've also enabled the mobile workforce and the virtual workforce, and providing these capabilities on your handheld device as well as through your laptop and other ways to integrate with them. So, as Ernie mentioned before, I think that one of the key takeaways is you can be up and running on these things so quickly, so you can actually get benefits almost immediately. So you have a very fast ROI. On the back office side, ERP applications, MRP, order management, accounting, business intelligence types of applications, this is a little bit newer area, and we're seeing really rapid growth in this area, but the applications have been really focused primarily on the mid-market, small to medium-sized businesses, and the complexity of being sort of in that low range and the low to mid-range. Some examples of these are SAP, Microsoft Dynamics, NetSuite, and several others on the ERP side. And accounting and business intelligence, you're seeing really great applications from QuickBooks and Intuit and several others that are in Sage and others that are providing full, rich accounting applications that are available via the web. And now there's a new area that's happening here as well on the business intelligence side. We know of some here actually in Georgia. There's a new company actually just getting up out of the ATDC called Izenda, and they do pure online, web-based, on-demand business intelligence solutions. And we're seeing a growth in this area, and you'll see also the same benefits are there, but these solutions are really just now taking hold and really starting to grow rapidly. On the supply chain side and more logistics focused here, most of the warehouse management systems have been on-premise applications that are highly customized and highly configured, integrated with all the different types of equipment inside of the warehouse. Inventory management has been around a long time, 3PL. These things have all been actually mostly on-site. Now they're becoming available in the web, via the cloud. And major providers in this space are Manhattan Associates, Red Prairie, High Jump, JDA, CDC Software. There's so many in this space that are really ramping this area up. And there's some interesting things we're going to talk about in case study we're going to get to in just a moment. But these applications are now serving the small to medium-sized supply chain and logistics needs of companies. And I think we're going to see very rapidly over the next 2 to 3 to 4 years is the rapid growth up into actually serving larger scale client needs, more highly complex operations, et cetera. Benefits are still the same, and if you think about now, front end, front office, back office, and supply chain all being accessible basically through an internet connection, you can have full integrated end-to-end view of your entire operation, all your customer interactions, your business operations, and how you're actually shipping product from one place to another. And you can actually have great visibility into your business with universal access to that database. So kind of in summary, there's a lot of capability in these solutions now. and it's continuing to improve over time, and especially in the ERP and back office and the supply chain side. You're seeing more and more functionality being offered in these on-prem or on-demand solutions, but they're not always right for you. So there are some things you need to consider when making a decision. Primary and number one is obviously customer requirements. What are your customers required from you in terms of capability, functionality? How large is your organization and their operation? What are the complexities? What are the idiosyncrasies about your business that are going to have to be managed? And that's obviously going to drive the functionality requirements for you, and that will also then identify the different systems that you will need to integrate with. As you saw in the previous slide, there's a wide variety of solutions available. They do fit a wide variety of company profiles, but the best way to really talk fits your business or not is to kind of talk through some examples, and we're going to talk about some case studies now. And Ernie, why don't you take us through the first one?
Yeah, I'll take the first one here. This case study is around the front office. It's around CRM and sales, marketing, customer service, and frankly other functional departments were involved. But the primary issue that drove the transition to a cloud solution was around pipeline management and visibility, RFP, the ability to react in a responsive or in a timely kind of way to RFPs in a complete kind of way, and essentially hook all the various departments, sales, marketing, pricing, legal, finance, engineering, and HR that are required for input around these RFPs, and then later in the process around contracts. So that's kind of the background of what the situation was. So the solution was an on-demand CRM pilot. In this case, it was a Salesforce on-demand application. And it started with a pilot, as I said. It started with pipeline management so that the team could get ahead of the pipeline so they could understand what was coming and how to adjust their schedules accordingly and how to get people prepared to respond, et cetera, from engineering and finance and legal and pricing, et cetera. It expanded very quickly to contract management. Once the capability was known and the fact that this group was hooked together, the same group obviously was heavily involved in contracts, not only creating the contract and managing the contract through the approval process up front, but later in terms of contract renewal, that same application and the same general process and approval protocols was expanded to contracts. And then on top of that, some other things help productivity of the organization in general with credit facilities so that credit information could be viewed early in the sales cycle, in the pipeline cycle, and alerts could go out if there was an issue around the credit facility as well. And then extended further into the things like D&B links where, the latest information from D&B could be brought right into the application and updated virtually automatically in that process. A key part of this solution was what's known in the industry as auto workflow that basically moves a contract or something in the pipeline from one department to the other. And again, that's done seamlessly in these applications, as many of you know already. This pilot was successful. It was expanded to 11 countries and about 200 users. It started out with, as I recall, the number of about 15 to 20 users. And I would emphasize again something that Kevin pointed out is that this kind of capability is available to companies large and small. This happens to be a larger company, but the same kind of application can be implemented for a smaller company as well. Right. The results are frankly significant, and they're not atypical at all of some of these cloud computing solutions. It was deployed front to back in about 6 weeks. The changes that I articulated there a moment ago were rolled out literally in days, and now the company has a full 360 degree of the customer information, has global pipeline visibility. The result was a double-digit improvement in sales productivity because the sales guys and gals, got more support, got it faster, got it when they needed it. They got the information they needed, and the staff departments had the full visibility they needed to do their part of the job as the contract moved through the pipeline. Another benefit of this was the fact that when leads would come in, from website or from seminars or from events or just good hard work from the marketing department, the lead conversion from those leads that came to the end result of being a contract to do business, there was a double-digit conversion improvement from what was evident before. So there were fewer lost leads, and that, as you folks know, goes right to the bottom line. Two final benefits: the contracts themselves, in terms of being able to be responsive to the customer demand for fast action on contracts, improved significantly. And overall, their customer base was happier, and happy customers buy more goods and services.
Yes, they do.
As we all know.
Yes, they do. I'll take another one. This one is a young company that was actually founded in 2006, and they're a manufacturer of optical networking solutions. They're based up in the Northeast, and they were kind of launched their product, and their product was actually doing very, very well in the marketplace, and they had to expand very rapidly. They were expanding 100% year-over-year growth, and they needed a solution that would scale with them. They were really looking for a back office solution. ERP and manufacturing resource planning was sort of a challenge for them, including they had coordination challenges between their Northeast office and the two external offices they had, one in Israel, one in South Korea. So they needed better integration between that. They wanted to keep free from large, expensive deployments of software. They wanted to really ramp this thing up fast and not really be tied to heavy investments in computing infrastructure and heavy investments in software. So they decided to implement, in this case, NetSuite on the back end, their back office, for the accounting and inventory and MRP and ERP. And then secondary to that, they integrated the CRM functions within NetSuite, tied them all together. You have an integrated view from the end to end of your customer interactions, customer management, all the way through your finances, your manufacturing operations. Headquartered in the Southeast, managing about 4 million square feet of warehouse space with hundreds of clients with changing and ultra-demanding needs. They needed a better visibility into their supply chain and how to manage their customers better. They needed to be able to customize their workflows more quickly and without any sort of delay as they were continuing to grow very rapidly. So they realized they needed to migrate from their older applications around warehouse management, transportation management, to provide them with the capability of doing that. As Ernie mentioned in that one slide where it shows some of the rationale for cloud transformation, they are reaching the limit on capability and functionality within their existing system. They decided to implement a cloud-based warehouse management and transportation management system from HighJump. They replaced their procedures that were primarily paper-based and went with radio frequency handheld devices, and were able to integrate that with the warehouse and with the transportation side of it in the yard. And we're able to customize the workflows for their hundreds of demanding clients with different needs without any code modifications. One of the capabilities that's within the HighJump technology is the ability to script different things without actually having to do any sort of coding changes at all. Improve their accuracy, improve their customer service, reduce their labor costs, made them more profitable, allowed them to scale, gave them a 25% increase in productivity. Obviously, that's going to drive greater financial performance. And then one very small, very recent, and very modernized manufacturer of sales and marketing support products. This is a company that manufactures, brochures and supporting literature around, trying to sell products and stuff for their clients. And they needed a better way to track their inventory. They were very manual, and they had one single computer on the warehouse floor that they all had to walk to do their inventory management. So they actually hired a small group to write an iPad application and then connected that iPad application to a cloud-based WMS from Red Prairie. And literally in a few weeks, they had modernized their entire facility, had mounted these iPads directly onto their forklifts, and reduced their time spent in tracking inventory by 30%. And obviously, that gave them what they needed to continue to scale their business. Those are sort of some examples. And Ernie, you want to kind of tie us all together? And
yeah, just some summary thoughts as we have gone through the slide and some things we see around in the marketplace. Well, it's obvious today, even more so than perhaps in the past, that technology can be a key competitive advantage. And with the availability of the applications that cloud computing can bring, I mean, with a thought process that, hey, get the technology, shoot ahead of the power curve, if you will, in terms of getting it in, getting it installed, and it will serve a true competitive advantage for you versus your competitors. And cloud computing, I think we've shown on a couple of slides, but there's just a lot of information on the growth of cloud computing, and it's a legitimate alternative now considered for most, if not all, companies, large and small. The software companies in general are pursuing solutions. Those that did not start in the cloud computing world earlier are now very aggressively investing in there. As an example, SAP, which owns the largest market share in the ERP market now, is very aggressively pursuing cloud computing alternatives in the ERP platforms and their CRM platforms. And the implementation advantages and the ROI advantages, we see a lot of that in the kind of business we do. They're real, and for the most part, they're not exaggerated, at least our opinion, because we've seen that many companies, and dozens and dozens of companies implement these cloud computing alternatives and achieve the ROI, achieve the speed to market, if you will, that's being advertised. A nice thing to know now, all functional areas are being addressed. Cloud computing in general started around the CRM and, for the most part, sales and to some extent marketing, and then eventually customer service. But now all areas, warehouse management, things that Kevin went through, the ERP world, other kinds of applications and human resources and other kinds of functional areas are now being addressed by cloud computing alternatives. The capabilities are expanding. Virtually every day you see a new capability being announced and expanded, and the functionality expanded as well. And I'd emphasize a point again that we've tried to make on a few of the slides. The flexibility associated with this is true, and it really allows you to adapt more easily, as Kevin said, without having to write massive amounts of code to the uniqueness of your business. It's much more flexible now in that regard. And of course, we often get asked the question, how do you get started? And with this world, if you will, of cloud computing, where does one largely start? And Kevin, you want to speak to that, please?
Certainly. As you saw, there's a broad range of solutions that are out there, and I think one of the key things is to remember that every business has some uniqueness to it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a competitive company. So I think the key here is to work with a partner that can help you and your company really understand what's available out there, understand what your requirements are, and then help you to determine which solutions are right for your company's unique needs. And I think that the next step of that is really in developing a plan and a roadmap and a business case and an execution plan that actually put the implementation in place, and then require a view of process review to make sure that you're doing things the most efficient way, and then as you're implementing a new solution, that you're implementing the improved processes along the way as well. And I think just getting with the right partner to help you get through that process, a group that has had enormous amount of experience in this area can really help a lot. And then it can also help you not just to develop the plan, but actually execute the plan as well. And obviously, it's all about getting things done in logistics. So that's what I would recommend. The other thing, we're going to open it up for questions and answers now. We've been trying to address some of your questions along the way, but if you have any additional questions at this time, if you would submit them through the question panel in your application online, we'd be happy to answer those questions. We'll read them out loud and do that kind of thing. And then we also wanted to kind of mention and thank you all for attending. while we're doing that? Or any questions?
And again, we're using the facility in the GoToWebinar. We have a large number of attendees on the webinar, so we thought a voice interaction would be a bit difficult. So
yeah.
if you do have questions, just go to the question tab on the application, send them in, and we'd answer them for you. And as we're waiting, Paige, you want to perhaps speak to some of the future things that you're thinking of?
Sure, Ernie. Thanks. I guess two comments. We've covered a lot of material. As you know, I mentioned in the beginning, there's a lot of different topics that we could have covered and that we want to cover in the future. This is where we really need your help. We need to know what you want to know more about. If you have ideas or thoughts or things you'd like to talk more about or hear more about, please email us or call us. You can see the email addresses and the websites and phone numbers up on the screen there. Talk and do a webinar on next time and beyond. What we had in mind for next time so far was to address the topic of mobile devices, their solutions, and all the different applications into logistics operations. Second, keep an eye out for the announcement of the next webinar. In the next few weeks, you'll see another announcement for our next webinar coming up. And if you liked what you saw today, and we've got some tweaking to do, obviously we're trying to make it better and better, help us spread the word so we can share this information with other companies that need it. And if you didn't like it for some reason, please call me because I want to hear that too. I wanted to thank Fragility Partners again for their thoughts and their expertise in helping us put this webinar together. And that's about it from my side. Thanks again for your time, taking your hour out before lunch to hang out with us and talk about technology and logistics. I think Kevin had some parting instructions, and he'll wrap up the Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, thanks again for attending, and thank you, Paige, for the opportunity to partner with you guys. We have a couple of key questions that came up through this, and one of those questions is, will the information we've covered today be available after the webinar? And the answer is yes. We email with links to be able to download the entire webinar as a streaming video. Awesome, cool thing. But also you can just download the PowerPoint if you purchase that. And both links will be available in the email we're sending as a follow-up. Just one last thing. It looks like there's no further questions. I don't think we missed anything there. So if we did, I apologize. There's a lot of things that were coming through, and I do thank you again. Okay, we have a new question. Hold on. So the question is disaster recovery plans, and how does a company develop a disaster recovery plan when you have a diverse suppliers and system access and security? Well, that's all part of the implementation plan that needs to be put together. One of the things that you'll get to see as a part of this process when you're evaluating different vendors is that nearly all of these vendors that are out there in the cloud have a very, very high availability and the high security as well. And these are in the 99.95 to 99.995 range uptime. So the real key is they are fully redundant in most of the cases. So redundancy and recovery and that kind of thing on the application side, it's actually fairly good. I think the key to consider as a part of your disaster recovery plan is your internet connectivity and the integration that you have layered internally. So as a part of your plan to evaluate how do you make a transition to a cloud-based solution, you will have to plan, as a part of that plan, you will have to cover the DR part of that. And part of what you'll think about it in that process is the aspects of how do you ensure that your connectivity is up 24/7. You may have to have multiple providers for your internet connectivity, so if there's a failover, it can be done very, very quickly. So that's one other thing to do. And also forcing the vendors that you have to sign a service level agreement with you should be part of that process. And then on an annual or a quarterly basis, run through the test scenarios.
And I think another thing I might add here is just part of the plans we're seeing today as Kevin said, it involves, getting internet up and running again in your physical facility if such is the case, but also what are some alternative ways to get to the internet, because these applications, again, can be accessible anywhere.
Right.
And we see companies putting these plans right inside an application so that they have the database with all suppliers, all customer information contained therein, as an example. The disaster recovery, all the critical information they need in terms of process, contacts, et cetera, right in these applications.
Exactly. And that's just on the application and connectivity side. Obviously, your entire disaster recovery and business continuity plan has to encompass things such as, natural disasters, terrorism, privacy, security requirements. And this is one of the other questions that came up. But on the application side itself, those companies that were listed on our example list have all of those things in place. They're running these things in multiple redundant data centers, and they have full access and privacy and security implementation. What's the word I'm looking for? They have the access, and they've already built in the privacy and security across their application, all the way through the infrastructure.
Right.
They're super, super highly secure.
And there are heavy audits on these things as well. I know one of the providers, Salesforce.com, even has Israeli security with Mossad, which is their version of the CIA, come in and try to break their application, year after year. That's part of their normal process. Other companies do similar kind of things to ensure a higher level of security.
Very good. We'll look for a couple more questions, and looks like there's one. Hold on just a second. Can you click on that one? Okay, so that's a great question. The question is, how does a company obtain ownership of their data and be able to have a backup copy in the event a disaster does occur? And we've got that covered up here.
Yeah, most of the software companies provide the following. One is that the data is always your data, of course, and there's never any compromise of that, and frankly never any discussion of that. And this data is securely stored in multiple locations and is available to you. Most of these software companies will provide that to you on a daily basis, weekly basis, on an as-needed basis, so you always have access to your data by downloading the information that they have. And the data, as Kevin said earlier, is obviously highly secured. When certain governmental departments and when the banks start using cloud computing, that was a big event. When the banks started using cloud computing applications with critical information, and because they had to do just unbelievably rigorous testing about security before they would offer the opportunity to do this application.
Absolutely. We've actually, in some of the places that we've done some work, our clients actually require us to go through their audits as well.
Yes.
And so applications on top of cloud are just a part of that audit on an annual basis.
That's exactly right.
Well, thank you again. Those are great questions, and hopefully we've answered those sufficiently. If you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to either drop an email or reach us by phone. The contact information was in the presentation, but I'll quickly review it. For the Georgia Center of Logistics or Center of Innovation for Logistics, their phone number is 912-966-7867. And our phone number at Progility Partners is 1-8-PROGILITY. It's a toll-free call. You can also send email to info@georgialogistics.org or info@progilitypartners.com. If there are no additional questions, then we'll be sending out a follow-up email with the information about how to download the presentation or the webinar itself from today's broadcast. This does conclude today's webinar, and we thank you again for attending, and we hope to see you very soon. Thank you.